Welcome back, everybody, to the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn here on the It's a Wrap Sports with your boy Matty B and my main man Kyle Quinn. I'm getting better at that. Joining you here on another rendition of the episode, the quintessential Eagle pregame show, brought to you by the folks here at It's a Wrap Sports. Week 9 of the NFL is upon us, but before we go forward, we always must move back. But first, let's get all this out of the way. Kyle Quinn, how you doing?
I'm great, Matt. I don't know if you noticed, but a lot less hair than I've had in our previous interactions here. There's a good reason for that.
Well, please do tell.
I did say that if the Eagles won 3 straight games after Nick Sirianni shaved his head, then I would join him in solidarity. And here I am, Matt. I took a razor to the head, got the buzz cut, and I am one with Nick, and I'm now standing with Nick Sirianni. So.
Well, it's a short line, Kyle Quinn, but you know what? You're a man of your word, and you got to respect that, Kyle. Congratulations. Good job. And yes, the Eagles are winners now of 3 in a row. After the Sunday 37-17 domination of the Cincinnati Bengals. First question right out the barrel to Kyle Quinn. Are the Philadelphia Eagles a Super Bowl contender once again?
I think that remains to be seen. They definitely have put themselves firmly in the top part of the NFC, at least with the way that they've been playing over the last few weeks. But they're not even in first place in their own division. They're definitely not looking as good for as long of a period of time as the Lions. And while they did dominate the Bengals and dominate the Giants, they're yet to still, I would say, I would like to see them beat one of the top contenders in the NFC or one of the top contenders in the AFC. Before I put them squarely in that category. But if you're a fan and you want to start dreaming on that kind of thing, I don't think you're out of line for doing that. Like, certainly with the way they've been playing over the last few weeks, that was by far the most 2022 Eagles win since the 2022 Eagles. And I mean, make no mistake about it. I didn't pick them to win. You didn't pick them to win. They were underdogs in the game. And not only did they win, but they did it in very convincing fashion in a very tough spot on the road, a place that they've never won before. And, I mean, they took it to a really good quarterback, and I think a decent team, a team that's better than their record says they are. So that was, like I said, by all accounts, the closest we've seen to the 2022 Eagles since 2022.
Yeah, I'll do you one better, Kyle. Obviously, I thought that this Bengal game, was probably the closest to the 2022 Eagles for me, as of last season against Buffalo. In that November 26th game, was back and forth, but it was very highly competitive, very highly skilled game between two very talented football teams that were, at that time, had aspirations for challenging for a Super Bowl. Of course, things went differently for the Eagles after that, but this was the first game since then that I can honestly sit back and say the Eagles had a pulse, the Eagles had a heartbeat, and the Eagles are back playing, at least right now, as one of those upper echelon teams in the league. Of course, you mentioned it. There's some obstacles still in the way that the Eagles are going to have to continuously prove that their consistency is and rise above that. Yes, but you got to be optimistic. Even the most doubting Thomas of Eagle fans like myself, you can't really just avoid what you're seeing in front of your face right now.
Yeah, and now it's 3 straight wins of, like, I guess what you could describe as like a linear progression, upward trajectory. The arrow certainly seems to be pointing up. They've gotten better every week so far, at least since the bye week, which is definitely something that we wanted to see. It looks like the offense has sort of done some soul searching, changed itself a lot. And the defense, I mean, it really feels like that adage about Vic Fangio's defense taking a little bit of time to learn because it's so complicated definitely seems to be showing itself. I mean, you can point to the addition or subtraction of Avonte Maddox and the addition of Cooper DeJean in the lineup. Maybe Vic is starting to trust guys and figure out what some of his guys do well and play into their strengths. But overall, just as a unit, I mean, the team is playing some of their best football we've seen in so long.
Now, coming out in this game, though, Kyle, it did not start out well. The Bengals pretty much took the Eagles to class on the first drive. The Eagle defense really wasn't much of a threat to them. But again, as you said, Fangio made the kind of the adjustments as the game wore on. The Eagles still came out of this game with, again, no points in the first quarter yet again. Well, they were right kind of at the doorstep as the quarter was ending, but still, it goes down as no points for 7 straight games this season in the first quarter. They then relied upon the running attack to kind of propel them to victory. Once again, Saquon Barkley carrying the bulk of the load, but Jalen Hurts being a little bit more involved in the actual planned running attack. Now, however you might come out on that by putting your franchise quarterback in that type of harm's way, we can discuss that. But the next question for me, based on what this game kind of transformed to, and then they mixed in the passing. Devontae Smith, I mentioned it last week. Hallelujah, man. The guy's back into the offense, had a hell of a breakout or return game. But are the Philadelphia Eagles a running offense? Question one. Part two of that question, is Jeffrey Lurie going to accept that?
Yeah, I mean, the running offense is their bread and butter. And if Jeffrey Lurie isn't going to accept that, then, I mean, I think that whole narrative is totally overblown. Like, Jeffrey Lurie wants one thing the most, and that's to be a winning football team and win football games. If he was against running the ball as much as we did, they wouldn't have signed Saquon Barkley. You don't sign Saquon Barkley if your main goal is to just pass your way to football games. But yeah, I do think they're a running football team. That definitely seems to be their bread and butter. It's like, you saw a lot of the play action stuff, under center stuff, and everything sort of branched off from there. And you even saw Jalen Hurts using his legs a little bit like that. That was the first time I think we saw Jalen Hurts look like a weapon on the offense in a little while. Whereas for the first portion of the season, you're kind of saying just do enough to not lose the game. Don't lose the game. But Jalen was really a reason that they won that game yesterday. I mean, Saquon Barkley did have 100 yards, but it wasn't the flashy, typical 100-yard game from Saquon Barkley. It was a really, really efficient day from Jalen Hurts, not turning the ball over again. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that they have that threat now of the running attack with Saquon Barkley. And it seems like Jalen Hurts is starting to become comfortable working out of the play action, stuff like that. So I think their bread and butter is a running offense. And yes, I do believe that if they win football games in dominant fashion, that the owner's not going to care about that at all.
The rushing stats for the day between the two main rushing heroes. Saquon Barkley, 22 carries, 108 yards, 4.9 yards to carry. Jalen Hurts, 10 rushes for 37 yards. As you said about Saquon, it wasn't flashy, but it was consistent. It got the job done. It kept the clock moving and the chains moving, and that's really all you can ask for. Let's now transition to Jalen Hurts through the air. 16 for 20, 236, one touchdown, and yet another week. That's 3 in a row of no Jalen Hurts turnovers, either through intercepting or fumbling. And Devontae Smith was your lead receiver, 6 receptions to 85 yards, and that beautiful 49-yard touchdown pass that, yes, was down the middle of the field, one of only 5 attempts down the middle of the field, but yet it worked. So let's talk about Jalen Hurts. Effective, but elite. But was he elite? I mean, was this the type of passing game that we can expect from Jalen Hurts when everything is working, or does Jalen still need to kind of turn up his passing attack?
I don't know if you could really ask for much more than what he gave you. The offense put up 37 points. I know only threw the ball 20 times, but let's be real about what we saw Jalen Hurts do. He outplayed Joe Burrow in Joe Burrow's house. I know Joe Burrow probably he threw the ball, I think, 16 times more than Jalen Hurts did, but he was putting the ball in harm's way. He wasn't as efficient as Jalen Hurts. And like I said, Jalen was a weapon. I mean, he was a reason that you won that game. And I know he had 10 carries for 37 yards. It doesn't seem like a crazy good number, but you also have to remember the run and the tush push a lot, which in effect is a 1-yard push play. So that's going to account for his rushing attempts, and he's not going to get too many rushing yards on that. I thought when he did take off, he was very efficient. You saw him kind of dig his foot into the ground and make some guys miss. Nice little juke in the red zone there. And then he did even take off around the edge and get into the end zone. So just an all-around awesome day by Jalen Hurts. And, I mean, elite, great, whatever you want to call it. It was good enough for the Eagles to put a whooping down on the Cincinnati Bengals. So that's a quarterback performance that you'll take any week. Now,
in Devontae Smith, they found a way to get him back into the passing attack. Kyle, is it going to take Jalen Hurts throwing the ball down the middle of the field to get Devontae Smith back in the passing attack? Or, I mean, you know who lives on the outside? It's A.J. Brown. Obviously, the 50-50 balls, the hero balls are always, rightfully so heading towards A.J. But in order to get Devontae Smith to be a prime player in this offense, does Jalen have to throw the ball to the middle of the field?
I don't necessarily believe so. I think it helps Devontae's cause because, like we talked about last week, he's the kind of guy that can line up anywhere from the slot or the outside. definitely a versatile guy. You can use him up the middle, see if you can, get some good matchups on a slot corner, maybe even a linebacker, or God forbid, you end up with a Nolan Smith on Jamar Chase type situation with Devontae Smith, which is ugly. But I don't know if it necessarily just has to do with the middle of the field unlocking Devontae Smith. I think this is really just another case of there's a lot of weapons on the offense, and we sort of do this a lot. When one guy has a really big day, it's like, where's the other guy? I mean, I think it's going to be a week to week thing. Like some guy's going to end up winning his matchups more than another guy, or the ball's going to find him a little bit more than the other guy. That's just kind of the way that it works when you're in an offense that's loaded. And there's going to be some games where they spread the ball out. I think the biggest takeaway from it is that Devontae's not phased out of the offense, right? And that just the fact that we did see him there get was it 8 targets for however many yards he got, and AJ Brown even got some of his too. So that was nice to see from Devontae. Maybe you will see a little bit more if they're able to start moving around and Jalen Hurts is finding those matchups over the middle of the field. But I do just think it's going to end up being a week to week proposition every week.
And let's turn the ball over to the other side of the ball. The Eagle defense definitely, as you mentioned, kind of already. Perhaps it did take some time to kind of figure out Vic Fangio's system. Maybe it's a complex system that you can't learn in training camp and preseason. You have to go through game speed reps, whatever that may be. But I want to highlight 2 position groups of the defense. And to be honest with you, I cannot believe I'm about to talk about them in a positive way. But Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean seem to be reinventing the entire linebacking core of the Philadelphia Eagles before everybody's very disbelieving eyes. Talk to me about the linebacker core. I know Nakobe Dean, much maligned. I think that a lot of people wrote him off, deservedly so. I mean, the guy really was kind of absent. But it seems now that he's starting to hit his stride without injury, he seems to be kind of rolling into the type of, and he's being used correctly as well, but a good, serviceable linebacker who's got a lot of pop. He's got a lot of speed. He's got a lot of speed. Talk to me about the Eagle linebackers, and are you surprised that they're performing this way?
Not, I mean, I guess just based on if you would have told me that our linebacking core is basically Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean, I would have been a little bit skeptical going into the season. But the linebackers are what makes Vic Fangio's defense go. Like, he needs instinctual, smart players at that spot. I mean, Zach Bond, I think, is the even bigger surprise of the two of them, because I don't think any of us knew who the hell the guy was. Nakobe, at least you knew, had a little bit of potential. Thought he might have been undersized. But he's starting to sort of come into his own in that role that he's got. And I think it's good that he's got the green dot out there. I think Vic Fangio trusts him to relay the defenses. I think you trust him to know the defense. And it sort of allows him to be a smart player and just sort of read and react. And you're starting to see him blast through some of those holes and get through and lay the wood on some guys. I still don't love him in coverage, but again, he's a linebacker. So, you're not going to expect him to be sticky on guys all the time. But really the key to the Fangio defense is the linebackers. And it's really nice to see that they're not failing him. I think that's a big part of the reason why the defense has been playing so well lately.
And the other position group is obviously the secondary. Quinn Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, highlighted by those 2 young individuals. Not only is their play right now promising, but the potential that they may bring to the Eagles secondary for the next 10 years of not having to worry about the Eagles secondary is extremely the biggest upside to all this for me, because haven't really had a stable group back there since like Andy Reid, like back in 2002-ish time frame. Yep. So it's good to see that. But let's talk a little bit about Cooper DeJean, and let's talk about Quinn Mitchell. They were very active on Sunday. Cooper, obviously, with that play against Jamar Chase, a nice little tackle there to kind of break up or stop a first down attempt, to kind of seal the game a little bit, if you ask me. Kind of definitely turned the momentum completely to the Eagles' favor at that point. Give me your take on Quinn and Cooper from Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and we can talk about how he's drafts all we want. Those 2 picks look like he nailed those. Honestly, I mean, for Quinn Mitchell to fall, you could argue it was sort of a no-brainer to take the top corner in the draft at where we were. But he's been great. I mean, he is, I think, just a few interceptions away, get the flashy stats away from being in serious defensive rookie of the year consideration. And Cooper DeJean, I don't know if it's like a total surprise. He's a 2nd-round pick, and I think a lot of people had him as a 1st-round pick before the draft, and that's just sort of the way that the board went. But He's been a huge surprise. I did not expect him to be as good as he is in coverage. I expected him to be the kind of player that we saw on that, chase tackle, which I mean was an even better play than it just looked. When the ball was snapped, he was following Chase around while he was running in motion in the backfield and shadowed him the whole way and just shot right through and laid a nice hit on him. I love the fact that him and Mitchell are willing tacklers. It's not something that we've seen out of a certain somebody called Darius Slay and some others last year. So it's just a really, really welcome change, especially when you talk about, like you said, two young guys that look like they're going to be cornerstones, no pun intended, for this Eagles defense.
And it's never a good day if you're the Cincinnati Bengals and Mike Gesicki is leading the way reception-wise. Great story out of Penn State. Kind of got lost in Miami, but I don't care. He was your leading receiver on the day, 7 receptions for 73 yards. Burrow on the day, 26 for 37, 234 yards, a touchdown and an interception. Eagles got to him one time for 12 yards, and all that. Kind of gets to a 37-17 Eagles win. Eagles now move to 5-2. Let's go to the Birds Blast stat pack on this game. Eagles were 3 for 5 in the red zone on Sunday. They are now 14 for 25 on the season. First half points, Kyle Quinn, just 10. Now a measly 65 first half points on the year. 9.2 average on the season in first halves. That's got to get cleaned up, Kyle Quinn. If you want to be a running attack, you can't do it from behind. And eventually they're going to run into a team that's going to stick 21 points on them before they can even get in the end zone.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought at the time that might have been the spot where you take the ball in the first quarter on the kickoff. They ended up deferring and letting the Bengals go down and drive, for 10 minutes in that first quarter and putting up a touchdown on the board, which is a very discouraging start. I will say it looks like they're making improvements, at least in the beginning of the game stuff. I know that the stats will say they didn't score in the first quarter, which they didn't, but they did score on their first possession of the game, finally. And they put together a nice, solid drive there. It just so happens that the Bengals took 10 minutes off that first quarter there. But I agree. I mean, if they're going to be bread and butter rushing attack, and they have to be able to get out and play with leads. And I mean, that helps your pass rush too. It just sort of helps everything. It helps the Eagles basically play an Eagles brand of football. So they have to get back to doing that.
Second half points, they did have 27, and for the season now, 106 for about 15 second half points. The Eagles gave up 4 penalties for 40 yards, now 36 for 208 on the season. They forced 2 turnovers, Kyle Quinn. They completely doubled their entire season total in one day, now up to 4. Kyle, they've moved up in the world. They're now averaging a half a turnover a game through 7 games. That's definitely, I mean, all puns aside, Kyle, obviously 2 turnovers in one game for a team that's devoid seemingly of the ability to create turnovers, got to be a positive.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they have to be, right? Because they're like, I know that they're playing well and the stats are going to say they're allowing so few points per game, but, they're not the most talent heavy defense top to bottom, right? So they kind of have to rely on being opportunistic. And I think that's what they were. In that game. It was a great play by Isaiah Rodgers to tip the ball to C.J. Gardner-Johnson. And then I think the other one was a punch out. Was it Zach Bond or it was somebody else? So that's good stuff. That's stuff you want to see. Hopefully that's something that they're practicing. And I mean, you see the great teams in the NFL just do that. They force a lot of turnovers, and that's like, it's beyond just like a fluky thing. Like some really good defenses have a knack for turning the ball over, but they just got to be opportunistic, and they have to keep that going for the rest of the season. I mean, maybe this opened the floodgates a little bit, broke the dam, and now all of a sudden we'll start to see them getting some more turnovers. And if they can ride that the rest of the way, then man, they're going to be a really tough team to beat.
And on the other side of the ball, we already talked about this. No turnovers committed. They're still now sitting at 8 for the season, but that is about 1.1 a game. So that's coming down because they're not turning the ball over 3 straight games without turnover. They did not allow Jalen Hurts to get sacked at all. The offensive line played very well. I mean, very well. You got to give it where you got to give it. And they had to come in. Was it Steen who had to come in for Becton? Played really well for a guy that's kind of fallen off a little bit over the last year or so.
Yeah, and then Fred Johnson, I think, with the most impressive performance of anybody going up against Trey Hendrickson, who's a beast. And he hardly allowed Jalen Hurts to get touched, or I guess, they didn't sack Jalen Hurts whatsoever. I think the other interesting thing, and this is sort of being swept under the rug just because we focus so much on Jalen Hurts' turnovers, nobody on this offense besides Jalen Hurts has turned the ball over.
Yep. It's a good
Nobody's
point.
fumbled the football. I mean, that's
a very
great
good
to
point.
see. Saquon, AJ, Devontae Smith got, all those guys doing a great job with their ball security. And now that the quarterback's not doing it, talk about a formula for success in your offense. If you're able to move the ball down the field and you're not turning the ball over, like, you're going to put up 37 points, and that's a formula for success.
Absolutely. And they did get to Joe Burrow, as I said, once for 12 yards. Their 20th team sack on the season. Fourth down efficiency. Kyle, I don't know how you take this. 1 for 1. That's it. They only went for it one time, and they were 1 for 1 on fourth down. Now 11 for 16 on the year for 68%. Are you happy to see that they were not in a position, but just the one time they had to go for it on fourth down?
Yeah, I mean, what that indicates to me is that they're playing ahead of the sticks finally,
Yep.
right? Instead of putting themselves in these third and long positions or whatever, second and long, or just not getting off to a good start on the drives, or a penalty that might set them back. Any of those things, they looked a lot cleaner in that regard, and just the fact that they're getting a first down on first down, like, wow, what a wild concept, like. So definitely good to see that that they only had to go for it one time on fourth down, and yeah, I mean, 100% success rate, 1 for 1.
Yeah.
Hopefully that number goes down even less, and I mean, we can just roll and keep getting first downs on first downs.
Absolutely. 16 attempts at fourth downs through 7 games is otherworldly. I've never seen anything like that. On the week, Kyle, as you mentioned, we both had the Eagles losing this game, so we both came up a little short there. I am now 1-6 on the season. Ooh. Just terrible. I don't know where this thing went off the rails, but you are 3-4. We both had Joe Burrow. That did not happen. Kyle, I'm going to throw a name into the hat for the MVP of the game. I'm going to go Devontae Smith.
I'm going to go Jalen Hurts.
Okay.
I think this is the first time all season, like I said, that we saw him be the reason that they won the game. Like, to go into Cincinnati and outplay Joe Burrow, who I think we'd all agree is one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, super impressive. Now, Devontae played his part in that, but he's got to get the ball from somebody, and Jalen Hurts was awesome. I mean, he was really accurate. Like we said, took care of the ball, super efficient. Not really putting the ball on the ground too much. Really only like a one turnover-worthy play, maybe that side out to Gainwell that almost got intercepted. So just a really, really awesome day by Jalen Hurts. Love the fact that he was making plays on third down with his legs when they needed him to. So you can give it to Devontae. Wouldn't be upset with you. I would go with Jalen. I think if there's any game to give Jalen Hurts an MVP, it's that one.
And of course, my new stat of the seasons that I'm keeping track of, it's somewhat of a moot point. I'm not going back and trying to find out all this stuff from game 1 through 7, but I am looking at those pass plays down the middle. They did attempt 5 out of 20 this week, which out of 20 attempts, they passed 5 times down the middle, which is actually pretty impressive because they only attempted 2 last week. So, we got to keep trending in that way. You got to use all fields, Kyle, and I get it. I think the cat's out the bag. It's not a Kellen. It's not a Moore offense. It's a Moriarty offense, right? And we can accept that, I guess, for what it is, right?
Yeah, and I mean, look, like, for all this stuff, whether it's Sirianni meddling in the offense, and we can all bitch about that when the it's not going well, but when it looks good, like it did last week, you got to give Sirianni credit. You got to give Kellen Moore credit. You got to give Jalen Hurts credit. I mean, I think there's credit to go around for the way the offense looked this week.
All right, Kyle, let's throw that in the trash and let's turn the page because we got ourselves Sunday. Oh, yeah, throw.
It's the best win of the season.
Yeah, well, no, we gotta move. Kyle, you can't dwell on it. It wasn't the friggin' Super Bowl.
Well, we can't it away. Don't throw it in the trash, man.
Filing crap away, man. We're throwing it in the trash because we got to move on because we have Sunday Night Football. No, we don't have Sunday Night Football. Kyle Quinn, Eagles were flexed yet again. 2 straight weeks where the Eagles got flexed. 4:05 now at the link. Kyle, does it not seem to you that it's been like 3 years since we've had a home game?
It does feel like it's been a while, but we were at home against the Browns, right?
And yeah, that was October 13th, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was like,
just 3 weeks ago. So not that long ago.
The way the schedule, the whole Brazil thing threw it all
off. It's been a weird start to the season home game-wise, but, I mean, you know what that sets you up for. Back half of the season, when you really need it, when you're going to get them.
It's when it matters. You want to have them. What do they say? The football season starts on Thanksgiving anyway, and that right. You want to have a lot of home games in your back pocket then too. But 4:05, the Eagles will be in their midnight Kelly Greens. How am I talking about? Kelly Greens. The Jaguars going with their version of their winds whites. We got 60 degrees, sunny, it is going to be a perfect early November day for. I mean, if you look up early November days for football, it's what Sunday is probably going to shape up to be at the link. The Eagles. Let's talk about some of the injury concerns going into this game. The three players for the Jaguars that have been ruled out: Ezra Cleveland, the offensive lineman; Christian Kirk, down with a broken collarbone, the wide receiver; and Mason Smith, their defensive tackle, is dealing with an ankle injury. Questionable players who were limited in practice yesterday: Tank Bigsby, Gabe Davis, Travis Antonin, which is he's trying to battle his way back. He's been out for the last 3 weeks. I think they're really trying to get him to go in this game. Brandon Sheriff, Brian Thomas Jr., Kellen Robinson, and Andrew Wingard, all limited or all questionable limited participants in practice. For the Eagles, Dallas Goedert, third straight week. Well, he'll be on the IR with a hamstring problem, and Darius Slay. That really is it. The Eagles are not listing anybody as other than full participants, other than them two who are out. Let's tackle the Eagle injury report first. Kyle Quinn, looking ahead into April of 2025, is it time to draft Dallas Goedert's replacement?
You could, yeah. I was curious if they were going to do that in this draft. Now it does seem like Grant Calcaterra has found himself a nice little role. He's not as dynamic as Dallas Goedert, but he's getting the job done. Now could they use another guy, another body out there as a guy that they could see if they can turn into a weapon similar to Dallas Goedert? I think it's time. Yeah, I mean, Dallas Goedert's shown that he's not really reliable in terms of playing his availability. And I mean, when he's out there, he's nice, but it's strange. I mean, Calcaterra goes out there and it seems like Jalen Hurts is looking his way, which he doesn't often do with Dallas Goedert. So I don't know what's going on there. I do like Grant Calcaterra, but I would not be surprised, and I wouldn't be against it if they wanted to do basically what they did to Zach Ertz when they drafted Dallas Goedert and see if they can use one of those early to mid-round picks on another tight end.
Now with Slay, is this more of a, I don't want to use load management, I don't want to use that word, but is this more of kind of like, taking it a little easy with him for next week in Dallas, or do you think there's some injury concerns here with him?
It's interesting. I don't know. Maybe if it were a playoff game, he might push to try and play. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know if the Eagles are looking at this game as sort of one that they can punt and not have their full complement of players out there. So I think there might actually be something going on. Not totally sure. I'm like freaking out about it or upset about it. I mean, Slay's been solid. Rodgers looked pretty good last week. I know he hasn't been on the field much, and we'll see. That could change pretty drastically. But I don't know if this is going to be a question later on. If Isaiah Rodgers plays well, I'm thinking about Darius Slay on Tuesday next week for that trade deadline.
Wow, Kyle, that came out of left field. And that's a really interesting point. And now definitely we're going to get to trade deadline talk because we are less than a week away. And strange that the NFL scheduled trade deadline day to be on election day. That's kind of weird, man. But whatever. But anyway, get to the Jaguars injury report. Anything that grabs you, Christian Kirk, Antonin trying to make his return. I think they're trending him to be in this game. Anything at all. I mean, let's talk. Let's call the Jaguars what they are. But is there any concerns there with their injury report?
Well, I think Etienne and Thomas Jr. are going to be game time decisions. I think that's what Doug said lately. I think this is transitioning to more of the Tank Bigsby led running attack anyway. But Brian Thomas Jr. is a weapon. He's a good player. He's probably the best offensive player that the Jags have. So if he plays or doesn't, that's a big swing. I don't necessarily believe that the Jags will win the game either way, not to spoil anything, but Brian Thomas Jr. is definitely a weapon and a guy to keep an eye on in terms of whether he plays or not.
Now, with all that being said, and I want to throw two additional things into this mix, with all the stuff we talked about, the Kelly Green, the Wentz Weiss for the Jaguars. We didn't talk about the return of Dougie P, but we will. But the return of Dougie P, who may be playing on thin ice in Jacksonville or coaching on thin ice, and all that. And I'm going to add in, does this have trap game written all over it? What do you think is going to happen on Sunday late afternoon? Don't forget, we're going to turn the clocks back, so it'll get darker earlier. So plan for that. Plan for that, everybody. What's going to get darker a little earlier. But with all that, Kyle, what's going to happen on Sunday?
So I understand the sentiment about a trap game. We have two division games coming up. This one's at home, then they're going to have to travel, and then Dallas and Washington, two obviously way more important games than the Jacksonville Jaguars. But here's what I don't think it's a trap game. One, the Jags just suck, right? And two, I actually think, and this is a credit to Nick Sirianni, I think that the team's mentality is at a place right now where they're not sitting there smelling themselves yet. I don't think this team believes that they've arrived. I don't think they're in a position where they think they can take the foot off the gas, lose focus, or look ahead of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Because I know the Jags stink and the record's bad, but they do have some talented players on that team. Like, they're not totally bereft of any sort of talent on that team whatsoever. They're not seemingly playing too hard for their coach, poor Doug. But they're not a team that I think the Eagles are going to look past, nor should look past. Now, what's going to happen? It's such a tough call because, like while the Jags do stink, they're hanging around in a lot of games. They took the Green Bay Packers to the final drive last week and only lost on a game-losing field goal. And while they have gotten their butts beat in a few times, they've hung around with some decent teams at points in the season. So, kind of a mixed bag with what to expect from the Jaguars. But I do think the Eagles take the pedal to the metal, ride the momentum. And I think, well, maybe it might not be convincing from minute one of the game to the final one. I think they're going to end up looking at this game as one they did win pretty convincingly when you look at the final score.
Yeah, I think you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I don't think Trevor Lawrence is the problem. I think the guy's a really good quarterback, and I just think that you're right. I think he's kind of given up on us. I think him and the rest of the team have given up on Doug, and this could be Doug's last game, which would be extremely ironic if this is the game that he gets fired for losing against the Eagles. But you're right. I'm concerned, Kyle, because I do think this has got trap game written all over it because the Eagles have not had the extra added pressure, as we talked about 5 minutes ago, of playing consistently in front of the home crowd. And we've seen the last time they were in front of the home crowd, you had Nick Sirianni jawing with the fans. So I think there is an extra level of maybe tension or pressure on this football team because they want to go out and they want to prove to the home fans that they are back, that they are for real. So I disagree. I think they are smelling themselves. And I think on Sunday when they go out there, that's what they got to avoid playing like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the added pressure of having to play in front of the fans and play well in front of them for the first time would lead them to not smell themselves and I think focus a little bit more on the task at hand. And like I said, I just don't think the Jags are very good at all. So
neither were the Cleveland Browns, and that was way too close of a game.
No, it was. Yeah, I agree. But the Eagles are playing their best football this season right now, and that was not what I was able to say before they played the Cleveland Browns. So I think they're a much different Eagles team than they were even 2 weeks ago, and I'm not really overly worried about the whole trap game aspect of it.
All right, Kyle Quinn, what are your 3 keys to Eagle victory?
Yeah, so now the Eagles are finally playing good football, and they're playing against a bad team. You can almost get a little bit weird with some of these. I think the first one is, like you said, Matt, with the trap game element in the air, don't look past the Jags. I think that key number one is to be focused in on this game. Don't underestimate a Jacksonville team that, while they have a bad record and they're not playing well, is a talented football team. They play with pride, at least on an individual basis, maybe not as a team or for their coach, but they have talented players that can beat you. Like I said, Brian Thomas Jr. is tough. I sort of not with you that I think Trevor Lawrence actually just stinks. So that I'm not too worried about. But they have some talented edge rushers. They have a pretty good interior offensive line. I mean, they are a team that has talent in some areas. So they can't look past the Jacksonville Jags. Number two, it sort of goes hand in hand with that, but you got to play a clean football game, right? Like you can't, the way that you let bad football teams in the game is by shooting yourself in the foot a million times, bunch of penalties, turnovers. You want to see Hurts continue that, not throwing interceptions, nobody fumbling, none of that. Maybe you can pick off Trevor Lawrence once or twice or strip sack, something like that. But make sure you play a clean football game and win the turnover battle. And then number three, I think what we talked about a little bit earlier in the program here is they need to stick to what their bread and butter is. It feels like the offense has now found an identity, and that identity is using Saquon Barkley as the weapon he is, and making plays off of that, using the play action, right? Going under center, letting Saquon go downhill, bringing the linebackers in, the safeties in, and then dumping it over to the top with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Jalen work in the middle of the field. I think it all starts with Saquon Barkley. So with the way the offensive line's playing and the way they're opening up for Saquon Barkley and the way they're protecting Jalen Hurts, I think if they stick to their bread and butter, then they're going to have a pretty easy time in this football game as long as they don't overlook the Jags and they don't turn the ball over a bunch.
So my number 3 key to Eagle victory is nested with your number 1 key to Eagles victory is in order to use that bread and butter, we got to get off to a fast start, Kyle. I'm tired of friggin' saying it. I'm tired of saying it. When Cincinnati was doing that last week, that 10-minute first quarter drive, I was like, that's what I'm looking for. Just the other way. I mean, come on, why can't we do something like that? I want them to win the toss, and I want them to take the football. Take the ball, go on a 10-minute drive, show off that rushing attack, show off that downhill attack of this new Eagle identity, and put the ball in the friggin' end zone. It'll set the place ablaze. It'll also put them up and then bleed off about a quarter worth of action. Kyle Quinn, I want me a fast start. I got to get me a fast start. I'm tired of asking for it. I think I'm owed a fast start. My number 2, key to Eagles victory, as you said. I do think this has got trap game, and the Eagles are not a team even with this newfound success. They are not a team that can punt anything. They're not a team that should look at anybody and take anybody for granted, because it wasn't too long ago that this team couldn't get out of their own way. And you know what? Yes, they've won 3 in a row, but with the schedule now getting kind of turning the different way here, heading into the back half of the season, as we are right around that halfway point, the Eagles need every friggin' win they can get. And they're going to need these wins in December. They're going to need these wins for playoff positioning. You cannot look past anybody, and they can't do that. They got to go out and play every game like it's their Super Bowl. And my number one key to Eagles victory is just leave no doubt when you walk off the field on that Sunday with hopefully their 4th straight win that the better team won that game, and the more dominant team won that game. I'm not asking for a 65-0 Detroit Lions-esque win. I'm just looking for another dominant win that leaves absolutely no doubt with the Eagles or the Jaguars who the better team was on Sunday.
65-0 would be nice, man. But I will say, and it is interesting because I sort of debated in my own head about whether it was smart to kick the football to the Bengals in that game last week. Yeah. And obviously it didn't work out for them in the beginning with the Bengals going down and doing that 10-minute drive. But really the swing in that game was the Eagles scoring in that middle 8 there at the end of the half, and then to open the second half. I mean, to be able to double up and sort of put yourself in the driver's seat in that game, that was a huge reason that they were able to sort of just run away with that one in Cincinnati. So it's interesting. I don't know if we'll ever see the Eagles take the kick. They just don't seem to like to do it. But I am with you that I'd like to see them do what the Bengals did to us, have that 10-minute drive and put a touchdown on the board.
Now you can go both ways on this, because we saw them do it to the Browns a couple weeks ago, where they took the last drive and sucked out the fourth quarter. And you can make a case that's more important, and I agree with you. But we just have not seen the Eagles do anything with the ball in the first quarter, first half. Listen, Kyle, for going on a year, I mean, since the second half of last season, or week 11, 12, where you want to go from it, it's just been a real struggle for this team to get going offensively.
Yeah.
And I think it would be just a really big confidence boost for them to do something like that.
Yeah, and while I agree that a nice opening drive touchdown would be good, last week was definitely a step in the right direction. I know they didn't score in the first quarter, but they didn't really get the chance to. The defense was more at fault for the Eagles not scoring in the first quarter than their offense was. They did score on their first drive. That was the best first drive the Eagles have put together all season long. So if they can build off that, then I think we're going to be in pretty good shape. All
right, Kyle, give me your prediction, your score, your prediction, and your game MVP.
So I do think that the Jags will hang around a little bit in this game. I think by the fourth quarter, we end up pulling away. I'm seeing a 30-20 Eagles victory to put up another 30 piece on the board. And I'm feeling a nice little Saquon Barkley day. So let's give me Saquon MVP.
I got the Eagles winning 31-24, and I got Barkley as well. So we're, again, Kyle, it's really eerily creepy that we're so goddamn lockstep this year. Yeah, something's got to give on this. I don't know why I'm 1-6 and you're 3-4, but Something's got to give here, Kyle. So yeah, there's our predictions for the week. Hopefully, I can improve to 2-6, and I don't care about you anymore. I just got to get off the schneid and get up through it and get some wins under my belt. But all right, Kyle. Question of the week time, Kyle Quinn. For those of you playing at home and don't understand what this part is, well, this is where I kind of lock myself in a room all week long and I try to come up with the best question to keep Kyle on his toes. Eagles related or NFL football related or just life and related. I never really went off that way, but maybe one day I will, but not this week. Kyle Quinn, Tuesday, 4 o'clock, NFL trade deadline 2024. You mentioned you floated a theory, you floated a potential trade piece, Darius Slay potentially being moved. My question to you is trade deadline related. Is trade line, it's about holding on to draft capital as well as trying to make a big splashy move. We've seen, it seems like every trade so far in the NFL has been for very, very top level type players. We can talk about 5 of them right off the top of our head. Are the Eagles in a position heading into this trade deadline to try to bring somebody like that in? A potential Crosby, a potential Myles Garrett, somebody on that side of the football that could really be a difference maker for this Eagle defense. And I think we're kind of in line that it probably should be a defensive player. Mm-hmm. But it's going to cost, Kyle. They're not getting Myles Garrett for a 5th round draft pick. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to give up some of that top level tier talent, and they don't really have abundance of it in 25. 1 first, 1 second, 1 third, 1 4, and 3 5s is all the Eagles have right now. So Howie's going to have to give something up to get something. Does Howie Roseman go push his draft capital, or a lot of it, into the center of the table and say, give me a Myles Garrett, give me a Crosby, or does he play around with trading a player for maybe a Linville Joseph or a level below what we'd be looking for in a Myles Garrett?
I wouldn't put any of those past him. I'm wondering if, he tries to dump off some back of the roster guys, recoup some draft picks, stuff like that, at least in terms of a draft capital gain there. But if you're going to go for a Myles Garrett and you want to trade a 1st round pick, I think you have to think about it this way. When we pick in the 1st round, barring another epic collapse, it's going to be a 20s draft pick. You're not going to get a player of the caliber of Myles Garrett at that spot that can help you immediately. You're just not. So if you're the Eagles right now and you're looking at yourself with a 5-2 record and you are 1 game, granted, I know they're not even in first place in the division, but they are 1 game out of the number 1 seed in the NFC. That's how they're going to look at this thing. So if you're going to take a big swing, I think you have to strongly consider doing something like that. I would not be against it. I think this is a good time for them to strike. I mean, the NFC is gettable. While the Lions are playing really good football, they could find themselves out of first place in their own division with a loss to Green Bay this week. So a lot up for grabs. They're in a tough division, right? Like NFC North is going to beat each other up. They already kind of have been between the Lions, Packers, Vikings, and even Chicago. There's going to be some losses on all of those teams' schedules. This is a great opportunity for the Eagles to sort of grab the NFC by the cojones. And I think a big move at the trade deadline can definitely help them do that. If they're going to go for an edge rusher, I think you can never have enough guys to get to the passer. And if you're the Eagles, you don't have guys really that can get to the passer yet. And it looks like Nolan Smith's sort of rounding into a pretty decent football player, which is a little bit of a surprise just based on how it started. But yeah, I would be willing to part ways with a top level draft pick if it means getting a player of the caliber of Myles Garrett.
Now, would you say that it's fair that the last time Howie swung for the fences at the trade deadline was in 2017 with J.J.?
I don't know if that's a swing for the fences. Maybe only traded like a 4th for him.
Yeah, but he was a known commodity. He was definitely a RB1 in this league at that time.
I don't know if I would call it. Like, I think he would have had to risk more for it to be a swing for the fences, right? Like an all or nothing move. Well, it wouldn't have crippled him if Ajayi didn't work out. I think that was easily his best trade deadline move, if you want to say that. Like, without a doubt, that helped propel them to a Super Bowl championship, which is the ultimate prize here. It's what we're doing this all for. So, yeah, I would definitely say it's his best. I don't know if it's like a Hail Mary, though, or a swing for the fences. It was just, I think, a really, really solid, smart move by Howie.
Yeah, and Howie, I mean, one of the things that he does not do well, and I don't think anybody can argue that, is his trade deadline moves have been somewhat conservative and somewhat depth in mind. And I don't think the Eagles are in depth position right now. They need some playmakers on that defensive side of the ball. And as you said, that first round pick, if Howie does part ways with one in 2025, barring a collapse, would be around 21, 22, 23 anyway. Who cares at that point? Because you're getting a top 10 player in Myles Garrett.
Yeah, you're getting a player that you would, barring like some sort of a miracle or getting really lucky, you're not getting a player of that caliber at that point in the draft.
Absolutely, Kyle Quinn. And that brings us to the end of yet another riveting episode of the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn here on the It's a Wrap Sports. Please like and subscribe our channel here on our YouTube platform. And Kyle, before I let you go, where can the good folks out there find you?
So every day, Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 on WIP with the midday show. And then, of course, on Twitter at Kyle_Quinn WIP.
And Kyle, you are a man of your word. Everybody, Kyle shaved his head as a man of his word. He said if the Eagles would win 3 straight games, he would shave his head and stand in solidarity with Nick Sirianni. And Kyle did it. So, Kyle, great job. Keep up the good work. At least you didn't make any kind of tattoo bet, which...
No. Yeah, we've seen those before.
Yeah, we've seen those before. So, all right, Kyle, listen, man, we'll talk to you next week.
All right, Matt. Thanks, buddies.
All right, Kyle Quinn. All right, folks, let's get into the back end of this show. It's time for me to go over my Week 8, how I did in Week 8, and then go over my Week 9 picks. Yes, it's Friday. Yes, there's already been a game played, but you know what? Time waits for no man, and we had to kind of wait things around. So I was 11-4 last week. 11-4, by far and away my best week this season. 11-4 last week. Heading into this week, here we go. Week 9 picks. Got the Eagles beating the Jaguars on Sunday. I had the Houston Texans beating the Jets last night, which obviously I was wrong about that. So as you can see, integrity is the cornerstone of my character. I'm not changing it based on what really happened. But yeah, I went with Houston for this. I made these picks earlier in the week. So I had Houston winning this game. Obviously, it didn't work out. Dallas and Atlanta. Give me Atlanta. I will never, ever, ever, ever pick the Dallas Cowboys to win anything. Miami versus Buffalo. Buffalo. The Raiders versus the Bengals. Give me the Bengals. The Chargers versus the Browns. Give me the Chargers. The Patriots versus the Titans. Give me the Patriots. Commanders versus the Giants. Give me Washington. New Orleans and Carolina. I like the Saints. Denver and Baltimore. Give me the Ravens. Chicago and Arizona. I like the Bears here. Detroit versus Green Bay. Detroit, I don't think it's going to be a competitive game at all. I think Detroit's on a different level than everybody else in the NFL right now. And remember, I picked the Lions to win the Super Bowl. That's right. The Rams versus the Seahawks. Give me the Rams. Indianapolis, the dawn of Joe Flacco against the Vikings. Give me the Vikings on Sunday Night Football. And that's the game that we were flexed out of. And Tampa Bay. So we got flexed out of a game that's going to feature Sam Darnold and Joe Flacco. Utterly amazing. And then Monday Night Football is the Buccaneers and the Chiefs. Give me the Chiefs all friggin' day long, and twice on Sunday, or 3 times on Monday night. And that brings us to the end of the Birds Blast, folks. I want to thank everybody for joining us and chiming in and whatnot and having a good time. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, or enjoy your weekend. It is Friday night, and make sure that you remember that we'll be back tomorrow afternoon at some point for Clear the Ice, Flyers, Bruins. And then on Sunday night, I will be back with the final word with Matty B. And then Monday night, the dawn of a new era in the It's a Wrap sports family. The wraparound with Sal G will make its nationwide or worldwide premiere. I guess the internet's worldwide. And we'll make our worldwide premiere with Sal G here on the network, 7 p.m. Monday night, November the 4th. So make sure you're there for all the great coverage here on It's a Wrap. Until we talk again, you guys have a good rest of your night and an outstanding weekend. See ya.
I've been coming up hot for a minute. Everybody know the drop when I'm in it. I drop the top when I'm in it. Everybody know the drop when I'm in it. Yeah, I'm so. Everybody know I'm hot. You know when the click through. Try to send this part to the XLB.